Welcome to this episode of the Josh Johnson Leadership Podcast. My next guest is a pastor who was preparing to go on a sabbatical at the time of this recording. So if you've ever wondered about that word, especially about taking one or why other people take them, listen up. If not, no worries, because we also touch on the topics of caring for those you lead, being a good steward of your power and influence, and trusting others to lead you. Great content, so let's get into it. I am thankful you made time for this interview. I know your life is a little busy right now, and we'll get to the reasons for that shortly. But for those listening who don't know you, could you give us kind of the nutshell version of who you are, what you do, and how long you've been doing it?
All right. Well, I am, praise the Lord, graced by Christ to be saved by his Son, and been walking in full-time pastoral ministry for the last 40 years, 10 years in Carson City, Nevada, as I used to call it. And then 31 years here in Grants Pass at the Jerome Prairie Bible Church, where I serve as the lead teaching pastor amongst teaching elders.
So the topic of conversation for today, and the reason why your life is a bit busy right now, is because there's a sabbatical happening in a bit. You're going to go on, and I was trying to think through, when you think of a sabbatical, do you think of it as something that you go on, that you leave for, that you take? But a sabbatical is happening in your life, and I'm kind of curious why. Why are you going on a sabbatical?
Well, we will be entering into a sabbatical time, and a sabbatical is something you can't experience, and it's primarily for rest and renewal. It's really the idea that taking some time where your focus is not output but input. Most of the time, I don't know everybody else, but at least for me, the lead pastor position is constantly a pull and a draw on your daily experience. And after a long period of time, that can keep you drained. Even though you're filling up, you still get to a spot. So one of the things, I was talking to somebody, they asked me about it, and I said, the interesting thing, you can go into battle and you can do well in battle and still come home with PTSD. And I think that's true a lot of times in the pastorate, is you can come through your battles fine, but you still have some scars, you still have some issues, and how you're processing, and you don't get time to process. You've got to start your next sermon. You've got to deal with the next crisis, and so you just have to keep moving. So this is a time to rest, listen to the Lord, drink in from him, and do some restoring, some rebuilding, some rethinking. There's a whole set of phases that we walk through to kind of intentionally redevelop, both rest and then redevelop my perspective.
Anything else on that? On what are you hoping that this sabbatical does for you, or what expectations do you have of this sabbatical?
That's an interesting way you put it. We actually, there's things that you do, and then there's things that you wait for the Lord to do. So there's a part of it that's preparation on your own part to let go, like what we started already for the last 3 months, almost 6 months actually. We've been working on what we call rest and relinquish. How do you let go of things so that you actually can go away and rest? And then the next phase when we started is the idea of rest and recovery, where you're just really trying to get some physical rest, but also some spiritual rest, where the phone's not ringing for you. There's no funerals, there's no weddings, there's no counseling, there's no board meetings. And so to spend that time then in prayer, Bible reading, listening to other preachers, lots of reading, and then actually a lot of outdoor taking in the Creator and what he's done in creation. So there's a lot of celebrative style, particularly in that rest and recovery stage. And then we get to I call it the reflect and refocus stage, and that's more looking through the markers of your life. So you go back and what were the positive things? What were the some of the painful things? What did you come away from those things thinking about? And then the realignment, reassignment, trying to figure out as you look towards when you're going to return, what has God impressed upon your heart? How does he want you to do ministry different? Is there a different focus? Like for me, coming here in at 64, we know that I will not live eternally in this place. And so having to refocus that perspective and say, how do I want to finish well at Jerome Prairie? And then when you come to the last phase is actually the reentry and re-engagement. So you're joining back into the ministry again. We don't realize, I think, oftentimes how fast we're running. Don't realize how tired we are. On my first sabbatical, somebody described it really well. They said, well, it's like you're on a bus and the bus is going 70 miles an hour and you're going to go on your sabbatical. And the bus driver gives you a signal and you come up and you walk down the stairs of the side of the bus. He pops open the door, pushes you out the door, and you fall out at 70 miles an hour, rolling into the dirt. Uh-huh. You kind of wake up, oh, shoo, okay, well, that ride's over. You get up and you walk around and you take your sabbatical. You come back and you're feeling refreshed and you climb. You come back towards the highway and look, lo and behold, here's the bus. It's still going 70 miles an hour and you're getting ready to try and figure out how you're going to get back on and stop. And you look up and you're the one driving that speed. And so that was kind of an awareness breaker last time. I can't say that I followed all the stuff that I discovered during that time, but to realize that a lot of times as a pastor, I'm pushing the speed limit of my own life. I'm running a life that doesn't have a full margin, but that's a choice, and that's not necessarily a good choice.
So I find fascinating that you already are. So you have 5 phases. You handed me a sheet that has 5 phases. I want to remember to ask you about where you got these. But I find fascinating that you're already, before you've even left, you're already in one of those phases. Is that what I understood correctly? You're in this release and relinquish. For those of you who are listening to this, I plan on making this available in whatever show notes or somewhere where this podcast is being shared, so you can look at these yourself. Where did you get this list from?
Well, the list came from Navigators.
Okay.
So out of Colorado Springs, and they have a very intentional plan for sabbaticals that they require of all their workers every 8 years. And so 11 years ago, we went and took a sabbatical orientation workshop, they called it. It was actually 3 days of teaching how to go away and rest well.
Wow.
But it's actually how to refocus, how to process the pain of life, how to, renew yourself. And so it was really intentional. So that's where this, I think I've modified things a little bit here, but that's basically where this core thing came from. I've really appreciated the commitment that they as an organization have made. In fact, they were willing to let Susie and I join them, even though we weren't navigators, and just come in and attend their workshop. And, it was easy to translate most of the material to where we're at.
Yeah. So there's 5 points here. You're already in phase 1 out of 5 phases. How long is this sabbatical going to be?
The sabbatical is going to be 16 weeks. So our intention is to leave September 1st and be back re-engaged September 17th.
Try that again. You're leaving in September. You're coming back in September.
December.
December. Okay,
sorry, December.
Okay.
It's another ember. But so I'll be back in the pulpit for Christmas Sunday.
Yeah.
On Sunday.
Yeah.
And this year. So it's a very deliberate process. In fact, I think that's the challenge, is being able to, the elders brought this to me. So that was kind of the cool thing about this one.
In that they
offered it. Yeah.
They told you it's time to go on sabbatical, James?
Well, actually they came and said, you've been serving here for 30 years and we'd like to honor your service. We'd like to continue to take care of you. And we know you're not intending to retire, but we'd like you to be able to stay fresh. So they know me pretty well. And so it was a good call on their part. And so I'm really looking forward to it.
So you're going for 16 weeks. Do you have a sense of what you're going to do and where you're going to do this?
The where we're going to do this is still being decided. We got about 50% of our 16 weeks booked. Generally speaking, the principles that navigators encouraged was the idea of being away from your home as much as possible.
Okay.
Which for me works. Is very helpful. I live a half mile from the church. I can see the church from that dining room window. So it's not like you're away and then, lots and lots of work projects and things to do at home. So actually, that's probably one of the harder things, is being able to find places to rest at a reasonable rate.
So no staycation.
This is,
but I mean, it's not so I guess it's not a vacation. A sabbatical is a sabbatical a vacation?
A sabbatical is not a vacation because it's an intentional time of renewal.
Okay.
It's a time for sharpening. I've described it. People say, well, why so long? I said, well, there's more to, getting a boat outfitted than just putting it in the water. There's a thing called dry dock after it's been out there a while, where you come in and you refit things. Or as I've told people, this is very hard to sharpen a chainsaw while it's running.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is to take time to sharpen. There in Ecclesiastes, I really have always appreciated a verse there that says, if the axe is dull and he doesn't sharpen its edge, he must exert more strength. Wisdom has the advantage of giving success. And so I think a lot of times we can, or I can move along and, hey, the axe is still chopping. We can still get something done. But the issue is am I as sharp as I want to be? I mean, I just finished 45 weeks preaching through the book of Revelation. That's a rather large, serious endeavor. But because it was such an intensive book to study, there was not a lot of time for other study and other development, at least the way I did it.
So you said you have about 50% of your time kind of figured out. Can you just give us a few examples of how some of that time is going to be spent? Yeah, well, in the rest and recovery stage, that's the closest thing to actually a vacation stage, where you're doing more recreation. That's phase stuff. 2.
Yeah,
that's your first phase,
and that's actually your first away phase. And so in that stage, we'll be spending some time with family. So we've got 3 different sections of time spent with some of my wife's family, and then some time with our own boys. So going to the Oregon coast, renting a beach house, and getting away for a few days, and then just walking through some of those kind of places, places in the beach. There's a pastoral rest place called Kara Springs in Sisters. Okay. We're booked for a week there. And then during the later phases where it's reflect and refocus, we're going to take almost a month and be out on a place called Camino Island off of Seattle. Okay. And there's a pastoral rest place there. And we'll stay in the same place for a month or close to a month. And that really is going to be better than the moving every 7 days or moving every 4 days. But as you can imagine, this can be, if you were doing it commercially renting, very expensive. So We're trying to do this through pastoral rest places and places that are set aside. When you go on your sabbatical, there's going to be a gap left in the life of your congregation and even in the day-to-day workflow of church operations. So how are you planning for this? Can you talk a little bit about what the church is going to do while you're gone? Do anything but preach on Sundays. Yeah, that's right. You just work one day a week. Job is, actually, that's been what we've been working on for the last several months. So actually, our elders have already started studying the scriptures together. They'll be doing the teaching while I'm gone. So we have teaching elders here. And so they will be sharing that load together. Jared Major, the associate here, provides a good portion of the teaching already. And so he'll continue to be the lead go-to person when it comes to organizing the teaching schedule and going over equipping our elders for teaching. So they've started their studies already for the book of 1 Peter. Okay. That they'll be sharing with their congregation. And then the elders have each took on different responsibilities as an elder for the church in different ministry areas. So this person will be stepping up when it comes to life groups. This person will be stepping up when it comes to counseling. This person will be stepping up when it comes to visitation. So other than the personality difference of a crazy extrovert, and we have like 5 elders that are introverts, so that's pretty funny. So we've noticed that there'll be some differences personality-wise that way, but we are looking to see it just be a healthy time to really express what we see as the New Testament principle of, the whole body working together. And if each part does its part, then you grow up. And that's what we're hoping to see.
One local pastor was once mentioning how they were kind of frustrated when they're a Sunday away, when they take a Sunday off or they're sick, and everyone's like, "Oh, we missed you so much." And there's almost this like, "Well, I don't want you to miss me because I want things to be able to happen without me." But then realizing, "Oh, but I am also part of the body. And so it's good that you're missed because we should all miss each other because we are a body together." What kind of learning opportunities will God have for your church specifically because you're not here?
I think oftentimes, it's not exactly what you were expressing.
Because you're going to be missed.
But we will be missed. But I think there is that tendency sometimes for a person to then, because they are hearing from God through you, to then confuse that with you. Mm-hmm. And so we definitely want to, that's one of the things we've always said here. This is not my church. Mm-hmm. This is our church. I'm a part of it. This is Christ's church. People say, "Well, I really like being your church." No, I said, "Look at my hands. I don't got the scars." Mm-hmm. And so we've really tried to always create this mindset that you're looking to Jesus for this. And so I think they will see and be surprised at how much God can speak through other vessels that they're not used to hearing from, and speak through other styles of teaching that they're not, teachers that they're not accustomed to. That's one. And I think the dependency upon a pastor as opposed to the lead pastor, as opposed to sharing that amongst the elders. So one of the exciting things is the elders have said, "Hey, our ideas is not, okay, let's do the sabbatical and you come back, let's get back to normal." Mm-hmm. It's no, we won't go back. Mm. So how do we begin living this way where it's a much greater shared ministry? So I think seeing the body share the ministry and seeing them bear this load together is going to be a tremendous thing, because I think it brings God glory, because again, it just shows, okay, he can use whatever donkey he wants to use to speak through.
Sure.
And that's what he does. So that'll be fun.
What are you wanting your congregation to know? Like taking 16 weeks as kind of the word sabbatical and going on a sabbatical, and it can be very easy to think of, the pastor's just going for a 16-week vacation. We've already kind of talked about how this is not a vacation. I don't know, how are they feeling about this in general? Your elders are on board. They asked you to take it, but the rest of the folks in your congregation.
We have shared this with the flock and been talking it through. So this is not a drop it, 2 weeks before you leave, drop this notice on them. So the elders were working on this for months before they were brought to the congregation. Then they brought it to the congregation.
So your elders were the ones who said, "What we are sending."
This is
so you didn't step up.
This wasn't me. In fact, they've done a great job of that, of saying no. Actually, Jared did a fantastic job with me one day. He said, "James," he says, "the way you learn to fly a plane is by handling the controls. Uh-huh. So if you want us to fly the plane, it would be great for you to still be in the plane while we're flying."
Right.
So that's what we've done already, is taken my hands off the controls. In some areas, I'm still the lead teacher because I had to finish Revelation.
Right.
But also but they've already stepped up in many areas. And so, people are, "Well, am I still going to get to call you? And what if I die? Are you going to come back and do my service?" And the answer is no.
Right.
The answer is the elders can reach me, and we'll have a system set apart where they know when there's a crisis that I need to be involved with. But we've aligned a couple of our Church of the Valley pastors already to provide counsel to the elders if they determine that they need that. Of course, we do have 2 other staff members.
Sure. And for those who are listening who don't know, the Church of the Valley is kind of a Christ-centered network of churches on mission here in Grants Pass in our city to work together to declare and display Christ to our community. And so there's this relationship you have with other pastors who may not be part of your same denominational network, that you trust enough to point your elders to if they need some kind of pastoral counsel or some, is that kind of,
Yeah. No, these are guys that, actually I've done ministry with for the last 25 years
Yeah.
that have just recently both retired. And they were willing to say, no, I'll take calls.
Sure.
In fact, one of them said, it's easy to solve other people's problems. It's when you're the pastor of the church and you have to face the implications of those choices that makes it hard decisions.
So what would you kind of, again, kind of a nutshell, just kind of refresh for us, what do you hope your congregation understands about this sabbatical that you're going on? That
it's, number one, that it's God's ordained rest.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I think we're in a culture right now that doesn't recognize rest very well. And to think about when you look in the Old Testament patterns where you had not only the Sabbath each week, but you had a seventh year of rest every 7 years, and then you had the year of Jubilee every 49. So God built in a system of rest in the Old Testament system, and then we, with the current culture and the way things work, we don't have a great system. So I think rest is probably the first thing I think, and then that's that idea of trusting that Christ is the head of his church, and he will take care of it.
Yeah.
And he'll do it through different people. It'll sound different. It'll feel different. Last time, I was 11 years ago, I took a sabbatical, about 12 weeks. The church actually was larger when I came back than when I left. Not a whole lot, but
Sure.
there have been people added to the fellowship. And, we were in the middle of a remodel when I left last time, and a good portion of that was completed. And so that's, even like this, we've got some very significant projects going on as we're preparing to leave. And so it's not the idea, okay, we're not going to do anything while you're gone. So I think seeing God work without the lead pastor's hand being there is it points back to God.
Yeah.
So I'm really hoping they'll see that. And, the renewal, I've had people when they recognize, even just when I get a couple weeks vacation and come back and say, I can tell you're rested.
Yeah.
And they can feel and sense that. So it's a deeper, stronger experience when you come back having been away.
Yeah. So for folks who don't work in jobs where the word sabbatical exists, any thoughts that you might give to them?
Well, I wish, many people who live in what I call the pressure cooker of a 24/7 kind of job could have times of rest. I look at, first responders, and you think of that. Oftentimes, of course, medical people will go and be trained, and they'll take time off for their further education. And oftentimes sabbaticals are used for that. Well, people take it to go write a book or take it to go, so they're going to go work, but they're resting from the other work they do. I think people can choose to build margin in our everyday lives, and that's one of the things that we work at doing. I think in the unique calling of pastoring, I think it's hard to ever fully be away, because at any time you can be on call, even if it's your day off, even if somebody else is supposed to be handling those things. So I would hope other people can find ways of doing margin. I just know some professions you can't, and that's unfortunately a blessing that they won't be able to participate in. But I think
sure, yeah. And then for if there's other pastors who are listening, and whether their church has the idea of sabbatical built into their way of caring for the pastor or not, what are some questions other pastors might be asking themselves as they think about sabbaticals?
Well, I think it really have to evaluate where you are personally, and sometimes it's hard to take your own blood pressure while you're still on the treadmill. So that is kind of the challenge of getting away and being able to check on your own spiritual health, having other people, and that's part of what we'll be doing, is talking to other coaches about where we're at spiritually. So I think pastors need to look at personal care and say, I need to take care of me, regardless of whether the elders or the leadership of my church sees that as a care. And then if they recognize they're in that spot where you've been at a church for over 7 years, and then looking at what a sabbatical might look like. A person can take a shorter sabbatical Ours happens, the 16 weeks is something we're having done 11 or 12, and the last one I recognized, we could have really benefited by a few more days away. Some people can unwind quicker than others. But I think that the idea of being willing to cultivate relationships with your leadership team where we are a team and they're recognizing we want all members of the team healthy. And so having our elders come to us and say, we would like to give you a sabbatical, as opposed to we think you need a sabbatical. That was kind of the fear thing at first. Hey, how bad is it that I don't know?
Yeah.
But it was more, no, we want to strengthen you for the years that are yet to come.
Yeah.
And I think that's something to talk about,
yeah.
that pastors could talk about with their leadership teams, of saying, what are you expecting? What would you like from me as a pastor? Then what is it going to take for us to get there?
Yeah.
And so choosing to have an extended rest, even a 4-week period, where a lot of times guys take 1 week. I was always an insister on if you don't get a 2-week break every year, you're never unwound. So and I'm a guy who takes a Sabbath every week. So that's not a legalism Sabbath, but I take a day every week where I'm not engaging in pastoral work, and I'm also not engaging in manual labor at home, and just am taking that time to renew and reflect. I listen to have somebody else preach at me, and do that. So that's part of what's actually kept us going for the last 11 years in the different ministries and things we've been a part of.
And we mentioned the Church of the Valley, and I am aware that for 25 years you've been pastoring with other pastors in town, and I've heard some of the conversations y'all have had about sabbaticals and even taking 3 months versus taking 4 months. And you yourself have received testimony from other pastors who have gone on sabbatical and kind of heard their pros and cons and their ideas and encouragement. So it's interesting to even the impact that community in relationships with other colleagues in your area. It's given you some ideas or some opportunity, it sparked your imagination for what, I don't know, ideas for your sabbatical too. That's just neat for me to bear witness to is.
Yeah, no, I think we can encourage each other to make good choices, and they're hard choices. This isn't easy for me. That's partly why you actually need to take it.
Sure.
It's because you also get very attached to the congregation, and so part of the ability to take your hands off and not be in control, give complete control back to Christ and his elders, and say, okay, I don't have to be in control.
Yeah.
That's a faith choice. And a pastor needs to be in a good place in a church to be able to do that. And I think, we're really blessed right now to feel like we're in that place.
I have 2 more questions for you. Okay. One is there any question that I should have asked you that I didn't?
Any question you should have asked me that I didn't? Well, I don't know that there's any particular ones. I mean, there's questions that we get asked. Oh, is this? Are you retiring? No, you're actually taking a sabbatical because you're not retiring. If you're retiring, we just quit.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, that sometimes can be the confusion in a church, though, is people think, okay, they're just trying to get away. We made a commitment. Maybe say, hey, what kind of commitment have you made to the congregation? That's a good question.
Yeah.
So for us,
what commitment have you made to the congregation?
So, we've let them know that when we would intend to be back and serve here another 3 years, that, okay, we're going to take this much paid time off, that we would come and reinvest that back into the church. So we won't be candidating at another church. We won't be looking at other places to serve. That's not what this is about. So for someone to do that, I'd tell them, hey, take yourself a couple of weeks off or something, but don't call it a sabbatical and go look for another job. That's
a good
not
word.
That's not what this is. And for us, this is a calling. And we've 31 years here. We're pretty attached. So I think that was one that was kind of a challenge for people to kind of see that, oh, you really are committed to here. How can you be committed and then leave? to go away. How could you abandon us? And I think again, that's a great opportunity to invite people into the care of Christ and saying, I believe that the Christ who's been caring for you through me will be caring for you through the elders. And had that conversation with a gentleman that's just come back to Christ recently, and he says, like, I just can't believe you're going to be gone. And he said, what am I going to? I says, you're going to call this person, or you're going to call. So I think one of the things is making sure, if you're taking a sabbatical, that you've established real clear lines of communication for the congregation to know how they're to direct their care call, their care needs, and then hopefully to have developed a process within your congregation for the congregation to care for itself, as I think Christ has designed it to. So.
Yeah, I can hear you really honoring the needs that have been appropriately, like they've been appropriately being met by their pastor. You're honoring that and wanting to be clear about how so they can answer that question for themselves clearly of who do I call when, what do I do if, and why is my pastor not here? So that's cool.
And I think if we can present the idea that it's not just how much can we get from our pastor, but how much can we take care of our pastor. Is an interesting set of verses there in Galatians chapter 6, where it talks about, he who sows to the flesh shall from the flesh reap corruption, he who sows to the spirit shall from the spirit reap eternal life. And everybody's familiar with that. But the idea right before that, he talks about, let the one who has taught the word share all good things with him who teaches. And I think it's very hard for us as pastors sometimes to teach congregations how to take care of us. So most of the time in a congregation, the look is, pastor, take care of me. It's not the sense of, I'm responsible to care for my pastor, not just to love my pastor, but to see that his needs are being met or her needs are being met, however your congregations are arranged. But that idea that it's the flock's job to help take care of the shepherd in God's economy. And I think that's hard. I think that's hard for pastors to teach on that. And at least it's been for me. It seems self-serving. It seems a little, and so that's awkward.
There's a real almost humility that has to come with, like, hey, I need help too.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I think this is a fun church. There's a lot of humility in the flock, and I think we've been able to, the flock knows that they are being shepherded by a sinner, a saint who sins, maybe be a better way to put it. And so that it's the awareness that, it does hurt to go through these things. It does, suffer. I think the last time we went on sabbatical, we'd had like 10 funerals in 12 weeks. And you're just kind of, I may be exaggerating a little bit there, but literally had people saying, I don't even want to come to the next one. And then I saw that potluck. I saw that dish at the last at the last potluck dinner, and it was just so much pain that you go through. And so, fortunately, this one we're not in that level of pain, but we've been in a push, and so it's good to take a rest.
But plenty of opportunity for you to have to say, do I feel guilty because I wasn't there for those 10 funerals and I should have been there, versus,
well, no,
Lord, you are caring for this place, and I am one way that you're caring for this place.
Yeah, well, that was actually what took place before I took my sabbatical, which made it very easy for people to say, okay, you're crispy, you need to go away and rest.
I got it.
No, but there was a dear friend of mine that was buried while I was gone, and she taught Sunday school here for 50 years. Those are the kind of people you want to celebrate. You want to be a part of that, And praise the Lord, one of our elders who'd been a part of our visitation team was asked by the family, would you please do her service? Yeah. And that was exciting. That was exciting to see them. So it's like right now, two associates they both have weddings that they're already booked for while I've gone on sabbatical. And I think it's great.
Yeah. Well, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
And that's, can we plan a bookend interview when you come back? Because I look forward I'd love to sit down and hear a bit on the other side about how your sabbatical was and some things that you've learned, and maybe there's some things that God wants to give to you that he might want to that through you make available to others that might be listening?
I'd be encouraged by that. I think it's one of the things you do a lot of journaling during your sabbatical. At least I do a lot of journaling during sabbaticals, and then try to glean out, what are the lessons. That was one of the things the elders asked me. Hey, what were some of the things that you discerned during your last one? And, we had some crises come up when we were finishing our last one that didn't allow us to do that final phase of the re-entry, re-engagement very well.
Yeah.
And so some bad habits returned more quickly. And we also hadn't spent the time preparing the elders to share the load. So when we came back, it was basically, oh, here's the load back again.
Uh-huh.
So that's been neat to see that that's different. So we look forward to being able to share what we learn during this one. And it may not be, massive amounts of information, but more the idea that there's just I know when I spend time with my Creator, I get filled up, and so that's a lot of our places that we're going are geared towards being enjoying His creation and being able to be a part of that. So,
well, thank you so much for this time and for processing and talking out loud about that. I've learned a lot, but more than that, I've just enjoyed talking with a friend.
All right, well, Josh, it's been great.